there is good in exposure, there is good in knowledge and education, but at the same time, to let an algorithm determine what's the most important thing in my life, I just think that's dangerous, and I think it's not sustainable in a healthy way.
We got Anthony Roldan on the podcast. What up, Anthony?
What's up, man?
What up, bro? Pastor Anthony Roldan.
You can say
for like
that.
the last year, right?
You can't say that. Yeah, in 2020, January of 2020.
It's like your anniversary just passed on.
Yeah, that's basically
Pastor anniversary. How you doing,
Pastor
bro?
anniversary. I'm doing good, man. I like the studio. It looks good in here.
Yeah.
I sound good. I think I sound good, but this is I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm so glad to have you on here. You being my best man at my wedding.
Yes.
Being someone who's been a close friend to me since we've been in youth.
Yes.
Youth ministry.
We graduated the same time in
2014, right?
2014.
Yeah, I think we met like my junior year or somewhere around
That
there.
was around. I feel like we both started going to Cottonwood.
Did you start going in your junior year?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I wasn't. I
felt like you were there like way before because I started going my junior year.
I'd probably beat you by a couple weeks, bro.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We've known each other for a long time.
Yes, that is right. Speaking of youth ministry, that's kind of one of the topics that I wanted to talk to you about. Specifically, one question I had in mind was, how has this season of COVID that we're in, we're slowly but surely, not really, getting back to normalcy, where we're actually allowed to have people in like buildings and stuff. How has that changed the whole aspect of youth ministry? And all like everything that entails youth ministry, just COVID, social distancing, Zoom, everything.
Yeah. I mean, so look, so there's the practical, like it's changed. Everybody would understand, we didn't have services. Everything was online. And then we did have outdoor services. Like you're saying, we're moving back inside, I feel like that's how it's changed grocery shopping, like it's very similar in that sense. But I think one of the big things that I noticed, at least when it comes to COVID and things that we learned about youth ministry, at least I'm speaking for myself here, is I feel like COVID showed me just how powerful and how influential social media is.
What do you mean by that?
Young people. Well, like I knew before COVID, right, that social media was addicting. I knew that it adds to the insecurity and the anxiety of young people. Tristan Harris and the Center for Humane Tech, like I've learned a lot from them when it comes to that side of things, but I don't know if I realized just how much social media can shape a worldview. You think of everything that happened in 2020 and there are kids who I talked to before COVID and I talk to them now, and they're different. Like they believe different things. They have different values, and it happened over the course of a year. Yeah. Where, I just know from the angle that I was able to have, like so much of it was I saw a post here, I followed a movement here, and before you know it, it's like Instagram can create a worldview. Yeah. And I just think that was something that I noticed where I'm like, okay, this is something that I want to pay attention to, and I think this is something that we're going to have to speak to and address and kind of figure out how to navigate into the future with, every single kid who is growing up today is going to grow up with an iPhone in their hands. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Using those platforms for good rather than, the stupid stuff. We've gotten into that on the podcast already of just like how toxic and unhealthy social media can be and all that other stuff. But you were talking about how, the kids' mindsets have kind of changed, like from start of COVID to after COVID. And there's like obviously a lot of like, it felt like propaganda, honestly.
Yeah, you could use that word.
Yeah, through all the social media. Do you have any like specific examples that you could throw out there of like how their mindset shifted?
Yeah. I think like one of them would just be the need to have an opinion about everything. And in particular, I feel like even just some of like the extreme ideas, right? Like that's, you said you guys have talked about this before, but like social media, that algorithm is built to, you know,
I was just talking about this today.
Yeah, to push extreme stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, one of the things that we've seen is just like a normal young person where I'm like, you wouldn't have cared about some of these things, you know, but you saw one post and that led you down a rabbit hole and that changed your algorithm. And now every day you wake up and, you know, it's not to say, like I said, I think that there is good in exposure. There is good in knowledge and education, but at the same time, to let an algorithm determine what's the most important thing in my life, I just think that's dangerous. And I think it's not sustainable in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I see, even with myself, even with us, where we can get so caught up in just scrolling in the timeline, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, and we can start shaping and forming our own opinions.
Right.
But even it's not really our own opinions. It's just the news feeds or the information that we're consuming that's kind of shaping the way that we think about certain things in certain areas of life and things that are happening. And, you know, there's a lot of false narratives out there. Like I've learned to really fact check sources and definitely not believe everything firsthand that when I see it on the feed, even if it is something that I want to agree with.
Right.
It's like, I don't know how true this is. There's someone that I know that likes to tell me a lot of facts that they find on like TikTok.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did you hear that from?
Yeah.
And they're like, TikTok. So you're just going to take that as face value and just, it's 100% facts just because someone says something on TikTok. It's crazy.
But they have like 3,000 followers. So
I have the check mark.
Right.
Jeez, bro. That is crazy. But like, yeah. Like it's so important, especially like to realize that now. And especially where you're at in youth ministry, where these kids, the youth, they want their ideas and their ideologies are still forming.
Yeah.
And they're so influenced by the things, especially that they see in culture and the things that they see on Instagram and the influencers. Like they're not called influencers for nothing. They're influencing the way that you're thinking. How do you, or do you communicate that to kids and let them know like that's not everything?
Yeah. I think, you know, with I think there's a side of like, there's probably a cleaner way to say this, but like that when I tell you something, especially if what I'm telling you is the opposite of what you're convinced of, it's only going to have so much weight.
Yeah.
But when I can help you perhaps see, you know, like the flawed reasoning or perhaps help you see like a different side. I think that's important. So when it comes to talking to young people, like it's just asking them questions, right?
Yeah.
And I also think there is, you know, a whole side of like, one of the things that social media does is it like allows us to be in our rooms, right, on our phone. And I talked about the algorithm, like we get to see what we want to see. We scroll right past what we don't want to see. And that's where COVID has not helped is, you know, people being locked in, like people not being able to have firsthand real life experience with people who are different from them. Because in the real world, you can't scroll past people who you don't like. You have to, you know, you still have to go to class with them and stuff. And, you know, I think that's why it's so great to be able to have church services again, is like just when you have people in a community and you have to walk and talk alongside people who are different from you, it affects you positively and it helps you not, you know, become a victim of the echo chamber and stuff. So yeah,
that's dope. Dang, bro. Do you have like coming off the topic of youth ministry, do you have like your favorite like a crazy youth ministry story, whether it's stupid, like super stupid, or super spiritual, crazy, like God totally did something?
Yeah. Well, no, when you said crazy, I was thinking of funny.
Go with funny then.
Yeah, I don't even. Oh man, so we had. I think of certain wrestling moments. I think you were at that camp. Right?
Which one?
Where we did the wrestling
when you
tournament.
Everyone in a ring and everyone was wrestling and it was I was the announcer, bro. I lost my voice.
Yes,
that was crazy.
You were. Yeah. So we had wrestling.
Put on the green robe. It was.
I remember.
from the 99-cent store.
The wrestling tournaments were great. Seeing kids like just get so pumped and channel everything they have to lose in a wrestling match is like I think that was hilarious.
To Pastor Ryan, you got into one.
I wrestled David. Pambit.
Who won that?
He got me.
He got you.
He got me.
It's the calves. It's the calves, bro. Oh,
nah, he got me. But wrestling stories are great. I'm trying to think. When I think of games, we had one game, a youth game that we had played. It was when myself and Brian and Grace had first started in youth. We played a game we did like a Christmas game night.
Yeah.
And we did this like game called Santa's Sleigh, where you had some kids pull like another kid who was like sitting in a sleigh, which was really like a cart that wasn't meant for people to sit in. And we just thought like, oh, it's so fun, right? Like they're just gonna run around.
Yeah.
And they, one of the kids at one point, they were running around the auditorium, and the way this kid ran and like started running and crossing paths, the cart like ran into a divider in the wall. Like it's literally like a pillar in the wall. It was like a structure that helps support the building. And oh man, I remember the visual of one kid who was sitting in the cart just getting absolutely, demolished into the side of the wall, and the other kid just got yanked back because the cart was tied around their body. Thankfully, everyone was okay. Everyone was fine. But stories like that where I'm like, oh, that was. Thinking back now, I'm like, man, I didn't see that could have been an
I feel like that's just a part of youth ministry, though.
That's
like it's like it's not truly an event unless you almost have to call an ambulance. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's that way often. Pushing the boundaries of health and safety. Just kidding. Just kidding. I don't know. But speaking of like this kind of stuff, I guess, do you like now that you're a pastor? Do you have to like ask to do things like this? Like you said, this is like your first official podcast. But
this is my first podcast.
You're representing a church. You're representing a church as a pastor. Do you have to?
No, I don't think. Right now, I'm not speaking on behalf of Cottonwood Church right now. I'm just telling you my experience.
I didn't even say Cottonwood, but all right.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I didn't. That was.
Yeah. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No.
Yeah. Do you feel like anything has changed, like within you, on the since you've being a pastor? Do you feel like anything has changed within you, or is it just kind of like because you were already pastoring before you became a pastor?
Technically, I was functioning as a junior high pastor before I became a licensed pastor. No, I don't know if anything changed. I mean, there's probably that whole side of like internally. I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like anything changed. It's like, okay, before I knew what I wanted to do, I think it was cool becoming a pastor because I think that's something where it's like that I don't get to make that decision. I don't get to, be like, hey, can I do that? It was like, hey, there was leadership who decided this for me. And in that sense, it is cool. It feels like confirmation of what God told me when I was 16. But, I also kind of felt like that when I was given the opportunity to serve in youth the way I do. So, yeah.
Do you feel like people have treated you differently? Or you weren't calling yourself a pastor. You're calling yourself the junior high.
Yeah, I mean, I don't introduce myself.
Yeah.
but first name Pastor, last name Anthony.
That's it. But do you feel like people have like treated you differently since you got that title? I was actually talking to someone who leads a ministry but doesn't have the title pastor, and it kind of gets awkward for them when people start calling them pastor, and I don't know if he says something every time, but it's like once he explains it, he feels like whoever he's talking to, some people in particular, they give him less like I don't know if this is the right word, like equity in conversations, less weight in the conversations. Like his what he has to say doesn't weigh as much as if his title was pastor. Do you feel like people have treated you differently since then?
I had one lady who was it was so funny. I was working at our prayer tent. This was pre-COVID, and she had came up to the prayer tent, And she was like, I want prayer, but I want a pastor to pray for me. And one of the people who was serving there, they were like, oh, well, he's a pastor. And he pointed at me, and she looks at me and she's like, you're a pastor? And I mean, that was a funny moment, right? But it was,
That's dirty, dude.
But I tell that story. No, honestly, I don't think so. I think, and I understand, like, dude, I'm a junior high pastor. I'm not like, you know, leading a church of millions.
Yeah. And millions.
Right. But I think when it comes to that, like, I'll just, again, all this, I'm just speaking personally here. It's like, this is what I feel like God called me to do, and this is what I get to do. But it's not because I'm special. It's just because God called me. And thankfully, this is what I want to do. This is what I love doing, so I love it. But I'm trying to not think about or care about what people may or may not think about me. Ooh, am I coming in and out? I felt like I was coming in and out. But
the headphones are for you. You got to know when to lean in and lean out. Know what I'm saying? Yeah, caring about what people think about you or not think about you. That's good. Kind of has to do with the next topic I want to get into, which is anxiety, which is something that you have dealt with.
Yeah.
For a few years now.
Yeah, I'd say I think I'd put it back in 2016.
2016
is probably
so 5-ish years.
Probably when I started experiencing what I would call like the symptoms of anxiety, or like the signals. However, that was in 2016. It probably took me a year, almost 2 years, maybe, to even use the word anxiety. I genuinely, for like a year and a half, I thought I was sick. I thought I had like digestive issues.
I remember you telling me.
Yeah,
about that.
and I remember I like went to my doctor and everything, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. I even had one person, a leader of mine, and a friend. They had asked me at one point, like, "Do you think you're anxious?" Because I was explaining all the things that I was feeling and all the physiological stuff, and they were like, "Do you think you're anxious?" And I was like, "No way." And they told me, like, "Do you think you have an idea of what anxiety looks like?" And because that's not what you're experiencing, like you don't want to call it anxiety, but it might be. And I remember thinking, like, at the time, like, nope, you're wrong, and come to find out, it took me a little while, but I was like, no, actually I think that's what's going on here is I'm anxious.
How did that start? Like, how did that develop into that?
Yeah, so in 2016, it started with me having a lot of, like my body told me I was anxious. So I started getting really sick. I started having, different physical symptoms that would pop up. And at the time, because anxiety wasn't really in my vocabulary for describing myself, I think it was my body's way of telling me what I was already feeling, which was stress, anxiety, worry, fear, and I, after so long of me trying to figure out what was going on, I think all of a sudden it started to make more sense of what was really happening. And that happened through other people helping me figure it out. Me also feeling like I'm like physically I'm trying to, change my diet and stuff. And that wasn't doing what I needed it to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Would you attribute it to one certain event, or was it kind of just like something that built up little by little, or was it kind of just like you woke up one day and it was like, what is this feeling? And then it kind of just kept going on from there.
Yeah, it was probably a process. It was probably progressive. Growing up, middle school, high school, I don't think that was never really anything I experienced. Definitely not to the degree that, I have experienced it in more recent years, but it was kind of like 2016. I was in college, and I had started to work at church, and it was just kind of like progressively, I'm like, oh, it's like what was one day of like being stressed and being tense and having some symptoms that turned into a week, and that turned into a month, and that turned into like this like on and off, like this thing comes and it goes.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Speaking of when it comes and it goes, when does it usually come? Like, are there certain situations? I know you kind of talked to me about it, but
yeah, it can happen at any time, and by it I really mean me. Like, I can get anxious at any time. Dr. John Deloney, he is a relationship. I don't know if you would identify as an expert, but he's like a relationship coach and a emotional wellness coach. He's been really influential for me in understanding anxiety and in talking about anxiety, because I think the way a lot of people talk about it at times is wrong, which it's kind of an aggressive word, but
how is it wrong? Tell me.
It's he has this cool little analogy that he uses where he basically makes the point that anxiety is kind of like a fire alarm, right? Fire alarm goes off to tell you that there's a fire, but the fire alarm isn't the problem, right? So if there's a fire in a room and you try to turn off the fire alarm, like, you're focusing on the wrong thing. And I think that's a really good picture of anxiety. When you get anxious, when I get anxious, if I try, which is what I tried early on because I didn't realize what was happening, if I just try to manage symptoms, if I just try to, put out like the smoke around the fire alarm, I'm not actually solving the problem.
Yeah.
And, so to answer the question of like when it occurs, it really can happen at any time.
Yeah.
In the sense of, I think it's, for me, I've learned what my experience is, and I can't speak for everybody.
Yeah.
Obviously, people have different experiences here, but for me, it's like, okay, noticing when am I out of my rhythm? When am I overstressed? When am I not paying attention to the health of my soul? And from there, what's, noticing like, okay, then that's when anxiety will come, right? And then not just trying to fix the anxiety, but fixing the root stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's good. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this, because I feel like this is a topic that a lot of people want to listen to, hear about, relate to in some sense, and kind of understand. But last question with the anxiety, like, what do you do, some stuff that you do that helps with it when it occurs, or even like preventative stuff? Like, you went into that a little bit, but
Yeah. Again, Dr. John for the win. He uses this little phrase, examining the ecosystem of your life, which I really like. And it's this idea of, again, okay, anxiety tells you that something is wrong.
Yeah.
Looking at your life and seeing what is wrong. And, easier said than done for some people. And, I don't mean to just make it sound super simple, because I still get anxious, right? Like, it's still something that you got to work through. But for me, looking at my life and some of the things that really help me on a very practical level is having people to talk to, kind of having people to bleed in front of and to, just vent, have people who I can, be totally transparent with, totally honest with. I think that's so important. That's been something that has helped me so many times when I feel defeated and when I feel, broken and messed up and beat down, is having somebody else who can encourage me and who can remind me that God still has a future, that one moment isn't defining. So I think people have been really, really key for me.
Yeah.
And the other thing would be, I think of that verse from Philippians chapter 4, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, through prayer, supplication, thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. The idea being, when you're anxious, pray. And I have found in my own life that practicing prayer, practicing getting alone, spending time with God, talking to Him, and listening for His voice, those have been really, really, it's been really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, like I said, it's something that I really wanted to touch on, and it's something I know that you deal with, and I know a lot of people deal with to some capacity. But yeah, we got about 2 minutes left. And last thing I really wanted to talk to you about was the topic of your end game. What do you want your life to look like in 47 years? not 47, but what is some big things you want to do in the near future and the overall like bigger picture future? What are some goals for Pastor Anthony Roldan?
End game is when Thanos does a snap, right? I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page because I snapped twice, and so
I didn't.
Cool.
Get it now.
Big goals, and what's the end game? I don't know, man. I think the end game is love God, love people, serve Jesus, and do whatever I can to do that. I obviously, I feel like I want to use my gifts, my talents, and whatever way I can. But I have, as much as at times where I can dream and I can have hopes and I can have like, oh man, like I hope one day to be able to write stuff that is influential or encouraging, or I hope whatever the case may be. I have those dreams, I have those hopes, but at the end of the day, I feel like Ephesians 3:20, God can take my dreams and He can do so much more than I can even imagine. So. Rather than, at least for me, this is just me personally, I think my dream, my goal is, okay, love God, love people, be faithful, do it over a long time and finish well. So
that's dope. I love it. Anthony Roldan on the podcast. It's a good way to end it right there. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching if you're on YouTube. Follow Anthony on Instagram and tell him to post some more stuff.
I was going to say, I post once a year. So
he posts once a year.
It's 2021. I probably got a new post coming soon.
I hope so.
And then not again for a minute.
That golfing video. That's up there though. If you want to see Anthony's golf lesson show off highlight on his Instagram, that's all he's got up there.
That's it.
Check it out at Anthony Robert Roldan.
Yep, Anthony Robert Roldan.
Check it out, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening again. Make sure to subscribe, like all the YouTube stuff. COVID fist bump is a thing on this channel.
There we go.
Until we're out of COVID. Peace.